Mom, I saw Dylan's dad make dinner. Like, actually cook, and it was straight fire. He said it was Blue Apron Assemble and Bake. All the ingredients showed up pre-chopped, and he just laid it out on a baking sheet, and no cap. Dinner was on the table in like 25 minutes. Apparently, it's chef designed, and it has like over 40 grams of protein. That's a lot, right? So maybe we try it. Just saying. You can be the next Dylan's dad. Blue Apron. Get 50% off your first 2 orders plus free shipping with code LISTEN50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
And I guess also we should probably look at that Milton Keynes Dons game. I forgot about that, Ed. How you doing?
Did, yeah. I was thinking that just as you said it, yeah. I too have tried to wipe that one from my memory.
It was all a bit unfortunate, although I don't think the sort of mass panic response that resulted from that performance was particularly appropriate. Fergie had the odd complete and utter rick against small sides, didn't he?
Yeah, quite a few actually in the League Cup. Yeah, I mean, look, it was a team of kids and fringe players, obviously had never played together before, and it was a bit all over the place, especially with the new and sophisticated system that Van Gaal's trying to move into place. So, I think some of the headlines are pretty lurid because MK Dons 4, Manchester United 0 looks good, doesn't it? And it allows for writers to talk about the skies falling in and all that kind of stuff. But in reality, that has very little bearing on the rest of this season. Just in the narrative of the early part of the season, it fits into that kind of crisis time mode, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think the kids particularly disgraced themselves, actually, in that game. I think, generally speaking, the blame lay with the more senior players, none of whom covered themselves with glory. I suppose De Gea didn't do much wrong. All the goals were basically gifted to strikers getting a chance one-on-one against him. But Johnny Evans, my good Lord, what a terrible performance that was.
It was right up there with the worst performances he's ever had for United, I'm sure. Look, he hasn't played a proper game for a long time. I mean, he had some time in pre-season, didn't he? But he's been out injured for the beginning of the actual real campaign, so he hadn't played a competitive game in 6 months or so. 4 months. And he looked pretty rusty. Seemed to carry on into the Burnley game too, unfortunately. So, well, a couple to write off there for Evans, I think. But you're right, the rest of the senior players didn't perform either, and that was the real problem. The kids, well, no one actually took their chance, so I'd say. No one really stood out and made us think that they need to be getting a chance this season. Michael Keane didn't have a particularly good game either. He's composed, I thought before the game he'd do all right in the sort of left side of a back three. He played there against Liverpool reserves not that long ago. He can do it. It wouldn't be his preferred position, I'm sure. He didn't cover himself in glory either. And few of the others did either.
The one exception to that for me was James Wilson. I think looked very lively indeed when he came on, and he didn't really get much of a chance to take, but he made a real difference, and Wilson's performance should have thoroughly embarrassed Javier Hernandez, I thought, given that they play in a sort of vaguely similar style, and Wilson was kind of all energy and movement, and Hernandez was just, this is a player who started the Champions League final and now can't get up for it against Milton Keynes Dons, not so much get up for it, but perform at that level. It's really worrying, and whoever does take him off our hands, if we can find a buyer, is going to have a job on their hands piecing him back together because he looks broken.
Well, I guess so. I think some of it is that his mind is elsewhere. He's thinking about the next move. I'm sure if he gets some game time that the confidence will come back. But, there was a story that went round about how he considered quitting the game when he wasn't getting in the Guadalajara side when he was 21. And that maybe his mentality is that it's pretty fragile, and he needs some confidence, and the confidence will come with a regular run in a team, but it's not going to be Manchester United. So I think he knows, and the club knows, for all parties, it's probably better if he moves on, which in a way is a shame because United won't have another player of his ilk unless Wilson's progress is rapid this season, which he could be. He's got the talent and the pace to cause problems at Premier League level. It's just a lot to ask throw him in and expect him to become, third or fourth striker this season in what is a transitional campaign.
Yeah, Danny Welbeck, and another senior player who played in that game, looked like he was going to absolutely run the show for the first about 4 minutes, and then was extremely isolated and not great either. And it'll be fascinating to see if he's off. He played again in the last part of the game against Burnley, and actually in that game, you saw why I keep banging on about why Welbeck needs to play with one of Rooney or Van Persie and not the two of them together. But we'll come on to that. Milton Keynes Dons were, they did their job really well. They were clinical in taking those chances that were kind of presented in their laps, and a big day for those players because, of course, that club is a disgrace to the national game, but the players not so much. So nice for them, I guess.
Yeah, we support our local side, sang nearly 30,000 MK Dons fans with absolutely no irony whatsoever. None of them turned out for the next Milton Keynes Dons game at the weekend, though. 7,000 there. Yeah, what a surprise.
Yeah, I think, as a non-local Manchester United fan, I suppose I shouldn't make fun of teams for singing "We Support Our Local Team," but no, you don't. That's the first time your stadium's ever been full, ever. Literally, this is not a banter. That's the first time they've ever sold out the ground, and they have the temerity to sing "We Support Our Local Team." People who were in the United end saying it was just the strangest atmosphere because they went 4-0 up, sort of cheered the goal, and then completely silent again.
Well, it's a club without history who tried to steal one and then very reluctantly gave it back, and still won't get rid of the Dons moniker either, which they should do. It's ridiculous. They have nothing to do with Wimbledon, and I think retaining that is just an insult to Wimbledon fans. But unfortunately, Pete Winkleman, the chairman there at NK Dons, his ego is too big, or his pride too big to do that, which is a real shame. It's a plastic club and they won't really go anywhere. They're destined for mediocrity for the entire history of that organisation. Unfortunately, United is a little less than mediocre at the moment, and that kind of showed on the pitch, didn't it? I mean, it's really hard to pick out anyone who really shone there. Wilson, when he came on, was lively for the last half an hour or so. Januzaj did okay when he played in central midfield, when he came on quite early on in the game for Kagawa there. Not a position he's used to, but he moved with the ball in the way that he does, and added some impetus to United when United actually had the ball. Andreas Pereira was okay. He's lovely on the ball, isn't he, Pereira? And I think he's got a future ahead of him. I don't know whether it'll be at United or not. And Sadianko did okay for the first half, didn't he? He played and he was all right.
Yeah,
bombing up and down the right there. So, no massive criticism of the kids. No real stars either.
I thought actually Kagawa coming off and Januzaj coming on caused a lot of problems for United, actually, and I think that was the sort of turning point in the momentum of the game, because it looked like it was going to be comfortable for United for those first 10 minutes, and actually I'm definitely concerned about Januzaj. I think he's a little bit behind with fitness, which makes sense given pre-season, so it's definitely too early to jump to conclusions, which I'm certainly not doing, but he just doesn't look ready to me, and it seems to be manifesting in his quality of possession. Like, his passing's not as assured as it was. Almost every through ball he tried was a complete disaster in that game. I thought he was, and he's a very young player, so singling him out for criticism is just analysis. There's nothing deeper than that. But I think he actually had a genuinely pretty terrible game, Januzaj. Kagawa's off though, isn't he?
Seems so, which might give Januzaj more opportunities. I mean, it's been something that a lot of people have been saying. Where does Januzaj fit into this side? I think left or right wing back is not the right one. It's going to be limiting for him, and he probably won't do the defensive job very well. So therefore, number 10 is the obvious one, or he could play up front, or he could play in central midfield. It feels like Van Gaal's testing him out. But you're right, he's not fit yet. He had the same extended break that Robin van Persie had. So why would we expect him to be on the same wavelength? He's had 3 substitute appearances so far, right? So let's not expect him to be fully up to speed. But after that, it's a season where he should be able to make a breakthrough and should be able to force his way into the side. And I think the kind of dynamic, pacey style that he's got means that potentially Juan Mata is under threat. Potentially. Also, it also depends on how long Van Gaal sticks with the three at the back. If he gets Blind in, which seems like it's going to happen, and maybe one other midfielder, he might feel confident enough to move to three up front, and then one of a front three would feel very natural for him indeed, I'd think.
Yes, absolutely, because I'm not at all convinced that Januzaj's natural position is number 10. I don't understand why that's the sort of default reasoning, because all his best performances for United have come on the wing, and he just looks an excellent winger to me. But anyway, that's what time will tell on that one, won't it? So
I'm not sure he's a winger in the classical stand on the touchline and put a cross in. I mean, he's certainly got the skills there, but then you'd be sticking him on the left wing, basically. I think he's a kind of dynamic, flexible utility forward, and that's why people think about him as a number 10. I'm not sure he's the kind of player who's going to dictate the tempo of a game. He's more James Rodriguez at number 10 than Zinedine Zidane. I'll just pick out a couple of very high-class players there just to compare him to. But do you know what I mean? I don't think he puts his foot on the ball and dictates whether the side is going to play fast or slow. He's a wall one paced, isn't he? Which is always fast. And he could be very dangerous coming from a deeper position. But in the way that say Wayne Rooney was when he was 18 too.
Yeah, wide left in a 4-3-3, that starts to sound beautiful, doesn't it? Januzaj wide left, Di Maria wide right, or the other way round. It's all very exciting. I guess one of them's playing out of position either way, but Januzaj looked fine on the right wing last season too. Talking of wingers, let's come on to the Burnley game, shall we? Manchester United's wing-backs, Ashley Young and Antonio Valencia, between them managed one cross that found a Manchester United player, although that was Juan Mata desperately scrambling at the far end of the box from where the cross was put in to kind of catch a slightly looping header that didn't go anywhere. So essentially they managed not a single successful cross between them. And actually I think that was an enormous part of United's problem against Burnley.
Well, by the end of the game, and this is the end of the game in which United were better than at the beginning of the game, almost every single ball was going wide right, wasn't it? The biggest two pass combinations were Evans to Valencia and Valencia to Evans, right? So a lot of United's play down the right, and unfortunately of Valencia's 12 crosses, none found the man, as you said, but 6 found the shins of the first man blocking the cross, and another 6 went looping out of play on the far side. It was awful, right? And it's not as if he was even that dynamic. So and beating a man, getting to the cross line and pulling crosses back that might be more dangerous. A lot of them were coming in from deep areas or just kind of hopeful balls, and it's symptomatic of what Valencia has become over the last 3 years now. Amazing that he got a new contract, really, given the standard of his performances over that time.
Yeah, absolutely. He just looks like a shadow of himself, but he has for ages. And that game was really problematic, but he was far from United's only problematic performer. Ashley Young, the pre-season bump is all gone, isn't it? That was vintage Ashley Young. Not any contribution to the attack, barely at all.
Well, his best contribution was to put in a ball, or what was it? A shot that the Burnley player basically caught, bounced around and slam dunked, and then the referee still didn't give it as a penalty.
Do you think that should have been a penalty then?
Yeah. No, I think he's. I think the directive is, and it's one of those ones that everyone always seems to get wrong. But the directive is if your arm is in an unnatural position, right? So he's turning and putting his arms up. So it's got to be a penalty. Although I did hear one person arguing that if it comes off the body first, it doesn't count. I'm not sure about that.
Ashley Young had a pretty good shout for a penalty where he didn't dive. He actually fell over because he was shoved off the ball in the first half. But listen, Ash, stay on your feet, kid. You're never getting another penalty. You've just got to accept it.
Yeah, as one person said to me after the game, he'd have to be shot to get a penalty, and in fact shooting would be a good option for him.
Harsh.
But fair, some people might add.
No, nobody in their right mind would add, in my opinion. You can't shoot people for not being good enough for Manchester United, Ed. We'd all be shot.
Well, political correctness gone mad, this is.
So if political correctness had really gone mad, you wouldn't be able to argue that Robin Van Persie and Wayne Rooney are too slow to play in a front two. Actually, I don't think that's even really the main problem. But in the first half, those two were quite literally standing in each other's zones. If you watched it, every time one of them got the ball, the other one was right on top of them. Yeah. And I think there was a specific instruction about that at half-time, because in the second half they were on the opposite sort of ends of the box, really, and it looked like Van Gaal had said, for goodness sake, like, don't stand so close to each other.
Well, one of them, and it's Rooney, needs to play in the channels a little bit more, and unfortunately Rooney's, I think Rooney's the bigger problem, and Van Persie's quite clearly not fit. Quite clearly, and a lot of talk about a potential knee injury that might need surgery too, which would be a pretty big blow for United and for the player. But I think Rooney's the problem here. He's either dropping deep and getting in Mata's zone. Look at the number of touches Mata had through the game, very few indeed. Or he's not drifting into wide positions, which is what he should do to drag one of the defenders out of position. And I think every time I criticise Rooney, I get a bunch of hate mail, but I don't care. That was a stinker of a performance from him, and he's causing tactical problems as well.
Yeah, 10 years today, as we record this, since Wayne Rooney joined Manchester United, and he celebrated it with one of his worst ever performances for the club. No shots on target, no chances created, 64% pass completion, 64%. Let that sink in for a second. I know some people really hate that statistic, but if you ever needed proof that sometimes statistics can sum up a performance, that 33% take on completion, no shots on target, no successful chances created, and 64% pass completion, that is a damning statistical analysis of Rooney's performance.
No, very, very true. Although, to be fair and balanced, which people accuse us of not being when it comes to Rooney, Robin Van Persie's pass completion rate was at 71%, so not a lot better. A lot of criticism also of Juan Mata, who just didn't feel very dynamic through the game. I mean, he didn't get the ball a lot, 48 touches in total, which is not very many for your team's principal creator. If you look at how many touches, for example, Toni Kroos might get on an average game, it's well over 100, normally the same with Xavi and most of the players you'd think about playing through, and he's just not getting the ball enough, and part of that might be that those three are getting in each other's way. Part of it is there's just not enough movement, including from Mata. Very, very accurate with the ball, but an awful lot of it going sideways from Mata. And again, that's a symptom of, I think, not enough movement from the front too.
And I think it's also a symptom of not enough quality in the wings, because this was the same against Sunderland as it was against Burnley, where the opposition are sitting incredibly deep. It's because they know that everything good about United comes through the middle, because basically United can just keep knocking it to the wings almost without fear of, one cross against Sunderland got a massive deflection, so Mata got on the end of it. That is the extent of United's successful use of the ball wide. And when we switch to a 4-3-3 with Di Maria on one flank and Januzaj on the other, it's going to be a whole different ball game, because teams will have to be much more concerned about the ball going out wide.
Well, yes, but there are changes that United can make in a 3-4-1-2 system in order to not be doubled up on all the time. So the problem is that in attacking situations that the defending side, such as Burnley, will have a left winger and a left fullback to cover one player, and United don't get the overload, and therefore it's always coming back inside. And in defensive situations, the left to right or right to left ball can cause a lot of problems, right? So what needs to happen is when United are attacking down one side, the left or the right-sided of the three at the back needs to go with their wing back. And it was interesting, I don't know whether you spotted it, but at one point Di Maria was shouting at Tyler Blackett to move forward, right? Which is exactly what he had to do, rather than going back to a central defensive position, because he had to go and support his wing back. Maybe that shows just a bit of experience and nous from Di Maria, who's, I'm sure, played in a lot of different systems over his career, and also, perhaps some leadership qualities too.
Yes, so let's talk about Di Maria, because if there was a bright spot for Manchester United in that game, it was the 10 minutes in the first half where Di Maria absolutely ran the show. He's not played since the World Cup, and his pre-season's obviously been pretty disturbed and surrounded by rumour and all that kind of stuff. It's got to be, got to have some effect. And it was no particular surprise to see him coming off with cramp after 70 minutes. But for that little 10-minute spell in the first half, we saw the sign of things to come. And he looked by miles Manchester United's best player already.
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Just how much ahead of the rest of them is he? I mean, look, he's obviously a top-class player. When he gets the ball, it's very high quality. His movement's great. I think he was just trying to work out where he should be in relation to the rest of the players. I mean, I mentioned Di Maria was having a go at Blackett at one point. Phil Jones also had a go at Di Maria for coming too deep, which wasn't a surprise given the massive gap between the lines of the three central defenders and the four in midfield. Someone had to come and get the ball, and Fletcher wasn't doing it. So his movement, his pace, his penetration is all great. I guess the one criticism, like much of the rest of the side, he was trying to hit the ball too early. So a lot of balls going into the front man. One beautiful one to Robin van Persie. You can see that happening a few times over the course of the season. He's going to be a very, very good player for United. I think he just needs a base around him because he didn't really have that against Burnley.
He created a lovely chance for Juan Mata as well, which Mata wasn't able to take. And I thought Mata's confidence looked low, which makes sense with what you were saying about how few touches he got. And also, of course, he pulled up with a hamstring injury. And I don't know enough about sports science to know whether that was coming on during the course of the game or if that is just something that just suddenly happens. But if there was some sort of niggle or something, that might explain why it was... I say it's a hamstring injury just because that's what it looked like. It might not be.
No, it seemed like it. I thought there was some really interesting sort of tactical dynamics from United. I mean, and as the game wore on, Mata dropped deeper and deeper, and it wasn't really to get the ball. I think they just needed to do that because they needed to get someone a bit closer to Darren Fletcher. Darren Fletcher, I think he's struggling physically. Clearly, he's on his knees and puffing and jogging when he needed to be running in defensive situations. I don't think he can hack it this many games. We all love him, but I'm afraid 2 years out of the game has taken its toll. So Mata dropped deeper at one stage, so basically to make a sort of 5 across midfield rather than the 4 and the 1, and they needed it because they weren't getting anyone close enough to the back three, and therefore all the balls were going long, right? But I don't think that suits Mata either. He's someone who wants the space and the time of playing number 10 in between the two defensive lines. I wouldn't say Mata could play at 8. I think he's a player who can really only perform best at 10. And it's a problem for United because when you have two players in front of him that aren't moving and aren't fit or aren't playing very well or haven't been playing for well for quite some time or don't play together very well and Mata, and there's no pace in that, it's all a bit predictable.
And then when you do get the ball out to good positions out wide, which is the thing you can then do, everything that comes in is of terribly low quality. So it's like, absolutely, he is trapped in a vortex of things that are bad for Juan Mata.
So look, they're better to come, right? So Rojo will slot into the left side of the back three. It's a position he's going to be very comfortable with, I think, and a bit more experience than Blackett. It looks like Daley Blind will come in. I think sitting him in front of the back three in a sort of defensive midfield position is the better one for him than on the left-sided wing back, where his pace seems to restrict him, or lack of pace seems to restrict him. Herrera's coming back and he's much more controlled in possession than Fletcher, and Di Maria can add some dynamism, and then the question really becomes, who of the Rooney, Van Persie, Mata sort of triumvirate do you drop? Because if you drop Mata, you probably lose some control, but he's going to be loath to drop Van Persie or Rooney, it seems. So I think there's a big decision coming up, and none of that fixes the problems that we have with Ashley Young and Antonio Valencia, who are two massive, massive holes.
No, but Luke Shaw and Raphael coming back massively improves that. So, there's promise there too. So, I mean, I'm assuming Luke Shaw's an upgrade at left wing back. His delivery was excellent for Southampton last season, and of course defensively he'll be much better. Raphael, no problem with his attacking contributions, and his defensive abilities are good. I think there'll be a problem with his footballing intelligence when it comes to playing wing back. I think that's going to be asking a lot of him, but he could crack it. And the other thing about the better ahead is Van Gaal said all along, takes me ages to get it together at a club. But he presents his players with vast quantities of information in the early stages, and it takes them a long time to assimilate it. And at United so far, I would say that Phil Jones is ahead of the curve with assimilating it. I think he's adapted to the back three just absolutely wonderfully, and he's really playing the role in the back three, as well as saving United so far 2 points, by making those kind of classic Phil Jones last-ditch interventions. Another fine game from him. Di Maria It's interesting because, we have signed 3 central midfielders in this window, right? Because Blint is really a central midfielder. Herrera's definitely a central midfielder. And then Di Maria is an excellent winger, but he's also very good in midfield, isn't he? There's no problem playing him there. That's not a square peg in a round hole by any means, is it?
It's interesting, the dynamic, if you play him in a classic 2 in there. I'm not sure that would suit him, but certainly he can play in central midfield. Of course, the counter to that argument is that Herrera might like to play at number 10, Di Maria might like to play left side of a front 3, and Daley Blind is a left-sided defender, really. That's another way of looking at it. So we still haven't signed a central midfielder.
No, that's not true, though, is it? That's it is another way of looking at it, but it's not an accurate one, because Daley Blind is definitely not a left-back. He played all season in centre mid for Ajax last season, didn't he?
No, and I think he'll do all right there. The only thing that makes him a £14 million player rather than a £24 million player is his lack of pace. His range of passing is excellent. His defensive instincts are all right, although I wouldn't say he's not a up and atom Roy Keane type of tackler. He's more a coverer. He's a Michael Carrick with a left foot. Lovely range of passing, though, both short and long. Think he'll, as we saw with that wonder goal at the World Cup, he can hit a 60-yard Hollywood ball, no problem at all. So I think he'll be a very good addition to United's squad. He's not that kind of world-class star, but you need a good balance in the squad, and it's going to help iron out some of the imbalances, I think, having a player that can play in multiple positions.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think if there's anything else worth covering about the Burnley game. I mean, ultimately, I left that game pretty pleased that United didn't lose, which is obviously ridiculous at Burnley, but I was expecting us to lose. Oh yeah, there's one thing I want to say about that game. So much kind of, when he brought on Anderson for Di Maria, there was so much kind of, what if Moyes had done that? And I was sat there thinking, I'm pretty sure if David Moyes had taken off a new signing who hadn't had a full pre-season, who had cramp, and brought on the only single player on the bench that could play that position, I would have said that was perfectly reasonable. No one wants to see Anderson in the Man United first team, apart from maybe Anderson, and even that I'm not totally sure about. But the idea that was a kind of calamitous clown-like substitution is just nonsense.
No, it's nonsense. Of course, there were options. I mean, I suppose the defensive-minded one, or the one that would have solved that kind of tactical problem of the gap between the lines, would have been to push Jones into midfield and bring Keane on. That would have had a couple of effects. Not all of them are good. Keane's not had a great sort of beginning to the season. I don't really like Jones in midfield, but he can certainly do it. And then and the other option would have been to bring Januzaj on, which would have been a more progressive choice, but of course, dangerous defensively. So, he went for a middle path there. Can't say Anderson did anything to keep him at the club. Maybe it was the shop window, as everyone likes to say, kebab shop window for Anderson, of course.
I mean, yeah, Anderson hasn't done anything to keep himself at the club since 2008, though, has he?
No, that's right.
No, that's really unfair. There's been a few since then, but they've been
really
few and far between.
Schalke in 2011, right? This is the one you're referring to.
No, not just that one, because Schalke were so bad. But no, the early part of the 2011 season, the Anderson Cleverly fraud. Two of them.
It's like a conspiracy book, that is,
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Where they pulled this crazy long con on us by being really good for 5 years.
That's right, they both got new contracts after that, of course. So anyway, I think that's about it for the Burnley game. We've kind of talked about transfers a little bit. Di Maria signed, Rojo signed, sort of, but still without a work permit. We had a chat before the game in which he said it was about this criminal case in Argentina. I was like, no way, he's not even been charged. But it appears to be about this criminal case in Argentina, which is interesting because he's not even been charged. But we'll see. It seems that Van Gaal is not too worried about it. They'll sort it by the end of the international break. So he'll be in, and then Daley Blind, a bid's accepted. Got to do the medical, and which I'm sure United medical staff are going to enjoy, examining his body thoroughly, as the female amongst our support seem to be doing at the moment. I don't know what the fuss is about, really.
Daley Blind is a handsome young gentleman. There is no two ways about it.
Yeah, he's got a girlfriend. So, hands off.
Assuming that they are not overly distracted by his piercing eyes and his abs, they'll be able to pass him fit, because they passed Owen Hargreaves fit. No one's ever going to fail a medical at Manchester United.
Oh, no, we've got all this magical new equipment from one of our sponsors, right? So sci-fi stuff in which Dr. Nick can press a button and it goes beep, yep, signed.
Yeah, and I'm sure personal terms will be no problem. Blint, big step up for him, and he'll be delighted to hook up with Van Gaal. And quotes doing the rounds, they were trying to get him to go to Inter, but he was only interested in Manchester United. So that's always nice when they say that, isn't it? Although
they always do say that. So did Di Maria after he'd effectively signed terms with PSG earlier this summer.
Di Maria also, he wrote this open letter to the fans saying like, "Oh, I didn't want to leave Real Madrid," and it was picked up in the English newspapers with this kind of anti-United relish, like that somehow he was saying, "Oh God, I've ended up at United. I didn't want to do that," but you know, it was a perfectly reasonable thing that he did. Of course, he didn't want to leave Real Madrid. Why would you? You know.
Yes, well, yeah, and he wouldn't have done if it wasn't for Florentino Perez's obsession with signing the next shiny thing. You know, in this case, James Rodriguez. I don't think Ancelotti wanted to lose him at all. I mean, 17 assists in La Liga, man of the match in the Champions League final. He was an integral part of that side. Let's not forget that. But that's the past. He's now United's Angel Di Maria and Daley Blind, and then I assume that Woodward is frantically trying to sign another central defender. An experienced one really is needed, and potentially another central midfielder too. I mean, no one would kick Arturo Vidal out of bed, for example. It doesn't look like that one's going to happen.
They might be not kicking him out of bed because if he lands on his knees, then he could be in trouble. I mean, it does seem like the knees is the big thing, right? I don't know whether that's just reading too much Vidal coverage and ending up reading between the lines, and actually he doesn't want to come. But it has felt all summer like it just needs Man United to go and lay a massive wad of cash on the table and it's all going to get done. But for some reason, United don't want to do that. And it can only be his knees because, my goodness, like that team is just crying out for a player like that. Assuming we don't get Vidal, any chance of another midfielder? Because I know everyone says we need an experienced central defender, and I assume I'm wrong, but it feels to me like a more box-to-box midfielder is actually still more important than another central defender.
Hey, why only have one when you can have two? You know, when the Glazer family have finally allowed United to spend some money, let's take it all. Spend. But of course, look, it's not just the incomings that are important in terms of shaping the squad. I think the outgoings are almost equally as important. United have increased the wage budget significantly by bringing all these players in. Of course, you know, Ferdinand, Vidic and Evra and Giggs all going off the wage budget too will have helped somewhat, but wage cost control is important, and that's why they'll want to get some players off the books. Whether they can or not is interesting. I mean, they might sell Cleverly. It looks like that's going to happen. He's not one of the biggest earners. They'd absolutely love to get rid of Anderson. That might be difficult. They might have to loan him somewhere, and that might include a payoff of some kind. He's only got a year left on his contract, so it wouldn't be too much. I'm sure they'd take a bid for Young if they could. I don't think that's going to happen. And Fellaini, they'd sell in a heartbeat, but he's unfortunately injured. The only way he can spoil it again, apart from being a big oaf, is by getting bloody injured just before the transfer window closes.
Yeah, players who are going to leave. Shinji Kagawa, who presumably is on pretty big wages. It looks like he's going back to Dortmund. Not on the bench, was he, against Burnley? I think that makes it fairly definitive. Oh no, he had concussion, didn't he? So you could argue that it was that. But apparently that Dortmund thing is going to happen. And Cleverly not on the bench and not injured, that one speaks volumes, right? Because you would have had Tom Cleverly on the bench ahead of Anderson even.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that one's done, right? So it's just Cleverly working out where he's going to go. He's got a few options: Hull and Villa and Everton. I think was the other one that's his options. Shinji going back to Dortmund is an interesting one because, you know, Marco Reus was absolutely outstanding in the few games he played at sort of the number 10 role at the end of last season. A very, very similar player, kind of dynamic player in that position, not necessarily one who's going to dictate play, but he's going to get the ball and run and make things happen. And it could well be that Shinji ends up playing out of position at Dortmund if he goes back there, which is not going to suit him very well.
Only for a season, though, because Royce will be off next summer when his release clause clicks in.
That's right, and United will be linked with him for many, many months, and then he'll sign for Bayern.
Yes, no question about it. Although, you know, the Di Maria thing does change the dynamic slightly, because it's like, you know, United were linked with him all summer, and then he went to Paris. Oh, no, wait a minute, he's come here. Unbelievable. Didn't see that coming. The other outgoings that are really significant, potentially, are one or both of Hernandez and Welbeck. And it has got to the point where it's looking like they both might be off, but that seems mental.
Well, it'd leave United in a very precarious position with Kagawa going as well, who'd be another man who could play in a sort of forward position. So if they both go, United have Robin van Persie, who's not exactly fit at the moment, or last season, or throughout his career. And Wayne Rooney, who always gets an injury for a sort of 6-week spell, also every single season, so he's guaranteed, and he's playing like an absolute stinker at the moment. So it would be very, very risky to rely on James Wilson as your third choice striker. Maybe it would come off because he's an exceptionally talented young man, and he's got pace to burn. And he really could make that step up very quickly. It's a massive risk, though, because, not all players are able to do that. And then I suppose the other options are that you could play sort of Di Maria in an inside forward position. I don't think it's his best, in all honesty. A lot of people talked about the Robin role for him, but I think he has other qualities. I'm not sure that's the one that would suit him the most. And, of course, Januzaj could play there too. Very much could play there, and he played a lot of his sort of reserve football at number 9 role, effectively.
Will Keane is still at the club as well. I don't know what that means in terms of that level of performance, because you'd think he'd be off. He was definitely on the infamous Daily Telegraph or Mail or whatever it was list of players who are leaving, although that list looks like it was absolutely bogus now because it's not matched the outcomes at all. Well,
I'm not sure whose agent spoke there, but looking down the list of agents, yes, it was Danny Welbeck.
Except that was when Welbeck was going to be able to stay, so I don't know, they're all very mysterious. Danny Welbeck, is he going to go? Is this going to happen? Am I going to have to deal with the emotional after effects of that? I would actually be fine, incidentally, because I think the best thing that could possibly happen to his career is that either Van Gaal works out very quickly that he can't play Rooney and Van Persie together, or Welbeck goes off and becomes the star man somewhere.
Yeah, but if you're going to sell him, you're going to sell him for a lot of money, right? So he's English, he's young, he's a forward who does score goals if he gets a chance in the forward positions. He's not of the very, very highest class, I think, we accept that. But he also has local hero status at United. So he has to go for a lot of money. This is not one that United should be flogging for 10 or 12 million. It's got to be sort of nearer 20, I think, given the current market. Given, United spent 16 on Rojo, a defender, and 14 or 15 on Daley Blind, a defensive midfielder. And so, in the £20 million bracket, it seems perfectly reasonable for Welbeck. We'll see if anyone actually wants to pay that. Some talk about Tottenham trying to get him on loan, which would be redonkulous, wouldn't it? To send Welbeck away on loan and leave United threadbare up front.
Yeah, Hernandez, a story doing the rounds today that Real Madrid are in for him. That's...
They were 3 years ago, right? There was it was known by everybody that there was a bid on the table and United could take it when they felt like it. But no, I think at this stage there's no point in him going to Madrid or perhaps even Juventus, and I wonder whether some of that talk was around trying to make the Vidal deal happen in a less cash-heavy way for United, and Valencia would be the sensible one for him because he will start.
Yeah, absolutely. Valencia in for Tom Cleverley as well, which was fun.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Are you sure?
No, I mean, Cleverley's got a young family, and he doesn't strike me as the type that'd be heading abroad quite so quickly in his career, or if ever. I mean, I know he's talked about watching La Liga, but I'd be really surprised. I think
that'd be such a good move for him, because then everyone could stop saying, if he was in Spain, everyone would appreciate him.
Did anyone ever say that?
Yeah, they did. It's
Tom Cleverley might have said that. Tom Cleverley's PR machine.
Yes, the 23 shirt's empty, Arturo, or nearly anyway. So yeah, we're going to have another transfer window where Anderson is still a Man United player, which is pretty remarkable. So we've talked a lot about outgoings. I really do want to talk about incomings, because we're recording this on Sunday morning, so there's less than 48 hours until the transfer window slams shut, and United, it's all quiet on the rumours front. There's nothing definitively no one's on their way for a medical as we speak at 10:30 on Sunday. So who's it going to be? Who's the frantic activity going to be around tomorrow?
Messi. No. It will be Messi, is what I'm saying. I'm not sure. I think it's, as you said, exactly. So For weeks, Vidal has known that United are interested and been interested in moving. He's said all the right things. They're interpreted in interesting fashions by the press, of course, so it's really up to United to put the cash on the table. They, I think you're right in saying, are looking for a structured deal that would take into account the state of his fitness, So if United taking on any risk there, and it's not, I don't think anyone's saying that his knee is definitely screwed, right? So he had a minor operation to remove some of the sort of frayed part of the lateral meniscus material inside his knee. It's keyhole surgery, but he played too soon on it, so I think that's what people are worried about. So they're looking for a structured deal, which will mean that they pay a lot of the fee based on the number of performances, which makes a lot of sense. And Juventus want a big pile of cash up front so they can use it to strengthen too, right? So that one might not happen because there's an impasse there. Elsewhere, I don't think United have anyone of high quality lined up. It looks like De Jong is the fullback, and that may well happen. He's available. He's not very good, but he would add another body in midfield.
The William Carvalho story raised its head again, and then the club started briefing. It did really look like the club were briefing one day that Vidal and Carvalho were on the agenda and briefing the next day that they weren't, which was slightly peculiar, but the club's briefing's been peculiar all summer.
Yes. Well, yes. Woodward likes to talk, and when he shouldn't, really, and then he decides he probably shouldn't talk. When we'd all like to have some more information. So Carvalho is a Mendes client. Mendes, who's going to make an absolute fortune over the next 48 hours or so. So now we're friends with him again. I suppose that might happen. Until Di Maria, United hadn't actually done a proper deal with Mendes. He wasn't De Gea's agent when De Gea arrived. He was for a time after that. He's no longer De Gea's agent, incidentally. So after the Bebe Gate fiasco, United didn't speak to Mendes for a while. It was like a couple of kids had fallen out. Now United are interested again, and the thing that Mendes is most interested in is fat wads of mega cash, and United are throwing that around at the moment. So, he might be able to get a deal done for United there. Sporting are definitely happy to sell, right? They are a selling club, and they'll sell to whoever pays the most money.
Has Mendes got any really high-level central defenders as clients, by the way?
Well, yes, he does, although I don't think any of them will be heading to United this summer. He has a roster of clients which is like a who's who of world stars. The most high-profile defender would be Thiago Silva. I don't think he'll be leaving Paris Saint-Germain this summer. Joaquim Mangala, who Manchester City moved for much earlier in the transfer window and signed him up, so he won't be moving. Garay, who went to somewhere in Moscow, didn't he? In the end, if I remember, Pepe's not leaving Real Madrid, and God help us if he ever ends up at Manchester United. Bruno Alves is well past his best, so I think the answer to that one is no.
Interesting. We do need a defender for somewhere. Of course, Hummels is not going to happen in 24. It's not going to go from silent to Hummels in 24 hours, is it? I can't see that happening. In terms of midfielders, De Jong, Carvalho, Vidal, wouldn't be surprised if one of them comes. Hope it's the most exciting, flashiest, splashiest one, to be honest. What a shame that Javi Martinez got injured for Bayern Munich and they swooped in for Benatia, because I reckon that might have happened and that would have been ridiculously exciting.
Well, it would have been, but look, by the end of this window, and assuming, I think we'll get another player over the weekend, by the end of Monday probably, and he signed 5 players anyway, and it spent a ton of money. Well, it looks like we're spending more than 150 million that I said absolutely never would not happen. 144.7 right now, so if Woody fails to get his man, I was dead right again. But it's a ton of money. So in that respect, it's a successful window for Woodward because they moved out some of the deadwood, moved on some of the older players. They've begun the process of transforming the squad, which needed to happen in a more robust way than was done under Moyes. So in that respect, it's successful. In the respect of actually having a strategy and planned out which formation you're going to play, which positions you need to strengthen in, and your list of 1, 2, 3, 4 in each position, and get the negotiations done early and quietly and cleanly, then it's failed, right? It feels so scattergun, so opportunistic. It doesn't feel like there's a strategy there to make it happen for United and get the best for the club and do it early, and we'll be desperately scrabbling around right at the end of the transfer window again, with Woodward on the fax machine, faxing every his dog in Europe for players, right?
You know, I think there's a bit more grey area than that. I think there's a bit more nuance than that because Herrera and Shaw were, you know, acquired early and quietly.
But those were deals that are done under the previous regime.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Rojo was clearly somewhere down a list, which the first targets and second targets or whatever didn't happen. Di Maria was opportunistic, but he's really the only fully opportunistic signing that we've signed so far, because Rojo was not opportunistic in the sense that it was suddenly a player who became available. It was just it was a backup option. But you're absolutely right about the thing of not getting it all done soon enough, because they were talking about wanting to have it all done by the start of the World Cup, and you know, Van Gaal was saying that Blint and someone else will be coming in. The one thing I wonder about the Blint transfer is, why did we leave that one so late? Is that because we wouldn't have signed Blint if we'd got Vidal or whoever?
Seems like he's the man that was it only takes 24 hours to sign a player man. Van Gaal was going on about it, but it does feel like it's a second choice, much like Fellaini was last season. They were after other players, didn't happen, so they've moved on to the one they knew they could get. At least they didn't pay £27 million for him this time, which helps somewhat.
Okay, so basically what we're saying is we've got no idea who Manchester United are going to sign in this next 48-hour period, right?
I know exactly who United are going to sign.
Who's that?
Nobody.
Do you really think? No, we're definitely going to bring someone else in. I was thinking about that thing about you saying we won't be spending 150 million, and I have to leap to your defence because you did the numbers before the Adidas deal was announced. And I think that has made a difference to United's flexibility to spend, right?
Yeah, although actually very close, given the even how you'll amortise the spending last season, so Fellaini and Juan Mata, and this season over the next sort of 3 or 4 years, it's very close to the limit of where United could have spent. So run it on a year, and United can spend quite a bit next summer as well, in theory, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's do some Twitter questions, shall we? We've had so many Twitter questions. I'm really sorry that we can't get to them all. @_Paul_D says, where the hell do we start? And that was written in the aftermath of the Burnley game. And I think the start has already happened. I saw some slight improvement over the Swansea game and the Sunderland game, and I saw some slight improvement again against Burnley. And I think if you look at Van Gaal's history, as he keeps saying himself, it takes a couple of months and then it all starts to click. I think if you know, in January we're struggling against mid-table opposition and the players aren't buying into the system and he's stuck with it and he's still playing Rooney and Van Persie up front, then maybe we can start talking, but I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be some improvement. You got to trust his experience as a coach, and he knows he's got to. I don't feel, I talked about lack of transfer strategy, I don't think he's got a lack of strategy. He kind of knows what he wants, and whether he's got all the tools to do that right now, I'm not sure. He's talking about time. He's talked about 3 months, and he also said it might take more than a year. Then he also said first step is to get into the Champions League, second step is to win the Premier League, and third step is to win the Champions League itself, which is a perfectly fair and logical timeline, which he didn't give times to, although all the papers ran that as Champions League 2015 and Premier League winners 2016 and Champions League winners 2017, if only it were.
@Greg Silent says, have you ever seen a pairing of two gifted strikers play so poorly together?
I know, it's like one of them farted in the lift, isn't it? And it just does not work. Does not work. This is Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard playing out at Manchester United. And we'll be talking about this in like 2019, won't we? Still. Do you think they'll play together this year?
Gerrard and Lampard have retired from international football, so the world of football needs another one of those sorts of things.
Some might argue that Rooney retired from football a couple of years ago. He's only retired from actually caring about the game.
But the thing about Rooney is, even when he's terrible, he's still trying. You know, there's you can't accuse Rooney of not caring about the game. I think that crosses a line to just unfair criticism, because he's never stopped working.
No. So I think you're conflating a couple of different ideas there. So I think that there went a time from, you know, when he was younger and it was all about, you know, the street footballer, where just playing mattered, to a time when his status and money mattered more.
Right, I get what you're saying. So what you're saying is the pure football of it leaving is the problem. So it's not that he's not making effort to maintain his place in the team and all that, but...
No, I'm not accusing him of lack of effort, although I think that is overplayed, to be honest. I don't think there was the effort, if that's what you want to call it, against Burnley necessarily. He was pretty static as a player. I'm quite sure that a lot of his love of the game has disappeared. Much like his first touch, I might add.
So at Andy27p says, if Anderson was the answer, what the heck was the question? I think the answer to the ultimate Jeopardy question to the answer, Anderson, is... what is the most remarkable ability to stay at Manchester United in spite of all circumstances pointing to the contrary of all time?
Yeah, who has stolen the most wages from any single football club in the history of the game?
I mean, I think that would literally be Anderson, right? Because he is a big earner, isn't he?
He is, although, he hasn't sat on the beach like Winston Bogart did for 3 years while being paid by Chelsea, but not far off. His actual... proper contribution to United has been very, very minimal. I mean, we can talk about the penalty in Moscow and it being worth it for all of that, but, let's be serious for a second. Aside from that, he shinned that one down the middle. His performances have been dross for 7 of the 8 years he's been at the club.
Yeah, there's been the odd bright spark, and that's always been followed by injury. At Harshvedant, last question of the week, says, how do you get by the whole weekend after United plays like tripe? And I have to say, it's not something I find particularly difficult to do, because at the end of the football match is life.
Oh, God, Perth, you're going to get into this, it's only a game nonsense again. I tell you what, it's harder this year because United won't have a midweek game until about spring at this rate. No European football, out of the Capital One Cup, and then, when we play Bournemouth in the third round, the FA Cup will be out of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but, I was also going to say, one of the things that really helps is doing this, because you get all the United out of your system at this point, and by the end of it, we've predicted a win for the next game, so it's all rosy again. And this weekend, we've got shiny transfer window excitement to mask the actual football.
Yes, no actual game this weekend, so QPR the weekend afterwards. But there is the international break, of course, and a whole bunch of completely meaningless, pointless games being played after the World Cup. So England played Norway, and Welbeck and Rooney are in that squad, and I guess Jones as well, and that's it for the United contingent.
Yeah, it's pretty small, isn't it? That's Biggie Smalling's not around. Tom Cleverley, probably not a United player, certainly not an England player at the moment. Michael Carrick's still injured, so yeah, not a lot of options from United's ranked masses for England. Shinji will be playing, but he won't be a United player by then. Who else is in international? Argentina are playing Germany in Germany, so we just have to hope that Bayern Munich don't somehow manage to poach Angel Di Maria. Who else is on international duty then, Ed?
Not a lot. Let's see. Let's look down the list of high-quality friendlies we've got coming up this week. We've got Slovakia versus Malta. Great stuff. No United contingent in this one. We have Belgium versus Australia, so I guess Januzaj will be part of that squad, although presumably not Fellaini, since he has his ankle injury at the moment. France and Spain. David De Gea has been called up to the Spanish squad, so maybe he'll get a game. That'll be good. Of course, no Potty Paddy in the United contingent anymore. I know Chile and Mexico, though Hernandez may not be a United player by that time.
But Vidal might be.
Yeah, you never know. It seems unlikely. France then go and play Serbia. No contingent there either, because of course Nemanja is no longer with us. Yeah, and retired some time ago anyway. So not an awful lot of United players off playing international football this week, which isn't bad. It gives Van Gaal a couple of weeks to work on everything he needs to work on in the training ground.
Yeah, and more importantly, I think even than that, it gives us time to get players back from injuries, because, the whole of United's early season crisis is taking place in the shadow of this ridiculous injury list, and they'll be back and raring to go by the time we play QPR. At least a number of them will be. So the Rantcast schedule is going to be a bit weird the next couple of weeks. We're not taking an international break, but really we are. We're just delaying it till there isn't an actual international break, because we're having the week off off after that due to some travel commitments on Ed's part and the fact that I'm not going to be back from Manchester until really late on that Sunday night. But we will do a show next week to look back at the end bit of the transfer window and assess what that means for the season ahead.
Could be a very short show, of course, if there's no transfer activity. There will be some players going and probably a player coming, and we can assess where we are from there next week. Well, there you go. So a defeat in the Capital One Cup and a draw in the Premier League. It's not been the most auspicious of starts for Louis van Gaal, has it? But a break now for a couple of weeks. All those injured players should be back. After that, it's going to look like a very different squad. Rojo will have joined and finally will be out of visa purgatory, we think. Angel Di Maria will have another couple of weeks with the squad to bed in, and it should look a lot rosier when United play QPR and then Leicester in the games following the international break.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to get hold of us between now and the show next week, you can get me at UTD Rantcast on Twitter, or you can get Ed at United Rant. You can get us both at facebook.com/United Rant and the show page at unitedrant.co.uk, where you're welcome to share your opinions of the show, bad or good. But if you say stuff that is upsetting, I might reply. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, you wouldn't want that.
Thank you very much to everyone who has donated. We received a particularly generous donation, which is very much appreciated indeed. If you want to contribute to the sort of freeware model of this show, then unitedrant.co.uk/donate for that. We haven't set up
I will be particularly enjoying that one. Mo money, mo bitches.
We haven't.
Going to get my Cadillac out and the lowrider and... Yeah, that's it.
We haven't set up a Kickstarter or a Patreon page yet because we're just not that cool. And yeah, if you could leave us a review on...
What would we be kickstarting exactly?
The podcast. People do that. Say, right, we'll do a season of the podcast, chip in $5.
Yeah.
Massive thanks to producer Tom, without whom the Rantcast quite simply would not exist anymore because it would have killed one of us by now. So yeah, that's awesome. And if you want any sound engineering work done, look up Tej Sound. That's TEEJ. So yeah, huge thanks to Tom.
Very good.
And I guess that's it, Ed. No predictions this week. Let's do one prediction. Let's predict the result in Germany against Argentina, since that's the match we probably got most interest in.
I think Germany are going to win 2-0.
Okay, nice. Is that the closest to a World Cup final two teams have ever played each other in a friendly? But it is.
I know, it's kind of bizarre, isn't it? So
thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back the same time next week.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.